Today on Comicstorian, we're going to see what Venom is in the year 2099. This is Comicstorian, where I take some comic books, I break them down to the bare bones nature of their storyline, telling you exactly what happened, cutting out all of the extra text and the fluff. The point of this is to allow you to know what's going on in the world of comic books, but also allow you to go out and buy them yourself for your collection, getting more context and more artwork if you choose to. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Every Wednesday, we've been doing a Spider-Man 2099 video right here at the Comicstorian channel, and today we're going to be discovering who is Venom 2099. The only thing you need to know about right now is that Miguel, the Spider-Man of this universe, is tired of everyone basically treating him like crap. So he left his version of New York, and he's traveling the world. Driving back towards New York, Xena points out to Miguel that he is merely acting paranoid that someone is watching him. Well, frankly, I feel like I'm entitled to feel like someone's out to get me after everything, Miguel tells her. But the conversation is interrupted as Miguel is suddenly ripped out of the car by two armored officers. He tries to struggle with the Flyboys, but they hold him secured. "You will not be harmed, sir. Your presence is requested at the White House by Tyler Stone," the officer tells him, and Miguel turns around in shock. Over in Washington, D.C., Dana finally gets Tyler on the holo in their hotel room, asking him how much longer he might need to be at the White House. She's getting lonely in the city, all by herself. "I appreciate that, Dana, but there's a great deal to sort out," he tells her. And she tells him that she understands and hangs up, turning away from the holo, only to be struck across the face and knocked out. Meanwhile, Tyler Stone is moving through the White House, knocking on the door of the Oval Office. "Enter, Mr. Stone," the president calls out. As he stands before the president's desk, he informs him that the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents have found Miguel and are bringing him in. "I expected nothing less from my operatives. Nothing less than obedience. Nothing more than loyalty. Anything else is of little importance," President Doom tells Tyler Stone from behind the desk. Meanwhile, over in New York, Gabe and Casey are walking down the streets of downtown, shocked that while they were on vacation and returned to the US, a coup d'etat happened. Doom has established himself as the President of the United States. The question is, what are we gonna do about it? Casey asks Gabe, and Gabe looks at her in shock, pointing out, "We can't do anything." "But you can. You can. O'Hara, you can't just pretend you're..." Casey begins, but her words are cut off as a hand reaches out from the alleyway, pulling Gabe in. Two Fenris goons throw him to the ground, demanding his money, while Casey shouts for Gabe to do something. She tries to help, but the goon throws her against the wall. At this time, she still thinks that Gabe is Spider-Man. "Halt! You cannot escape!" Doom watchdogs shout as they rush into the alleyway, both Gabe and Casey watching them run away in surprise. What just happened? Meanwhile, over in the White House, Miguel is finally ushered into the Oval Office, shocked to see Doom standing there besides Tyler Stone. Tyler introduces Miguel as his top scientist, and the new president pauses as he looks at the man. "Have we met before, Mr. O'Hara?" he asks, and Miguel narrows his eyes, remembering when Spider-Man worked with Doom to stop Valhalla from falling out of the skies in New York. "I don't think so, but I'm lousy with faces," Miguel jokes, and Doom nods, explaining that Tyler Stone is taken over as his corporate minister, hoping to bring the corporations together to aid the country instead of constantly having infighting. Tyler puts his hand on Miguel's shoulder, offering the former position as the head of Alchemex to him, and Miguel stares in shock. Meanwhile, Dana struggles against her ties, laying across the hotel bed. She tries to scream, but her mouth is gagged, and the bedroom door shoots her into darkness, her assailant readying his weapon. It's later that Miguel sits atop a rooftop, dressed as Spider-Man, staring out into the night air before breaking out into riotous laughter. "Me, run Alchemex!" But he pauses, wondering why he told Doom and Tyler that he would have to think about it. But then he turns, seeing several of Doom's S.H.I.E.L.D. officers moving towards a group that are protesting Spiderites. Spider-Man leaps among them, lashing with his fists and feet at the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and the Spiderites continue to cheer him on. "Spider-Man!" Doom calls from behind him, and he whirls around to see the new president standing atop a hover platform. "Are these people friends of yours?" he asks, and the Spiderites begin to cheer about their religious god. "Shut up!" Spider-Man shouts to them, whirling around, with Doom floating closer, asking the Spiderites if they're able to express their opinions without the use of violence and destruction, and if they agree, he'll hand them a permit to protest peacefully, without the worry of S.H.I.E.L.D. harassment. He then turns to Spider-Man. "I'm interested in offering you a cabinet position, Minister of Superhuman Affairs. Think on it and let me know," he says to the hero before turning and floating away. Meanwhile, over in the park, Gabe sits alone, pouting over what happened to him earlier. Casey runs up to him, questioning why he didn't lay into the Fenris thugs, and he stands angry with her, trying to once again explain that she is wrong and he isn't Spider-Man. But she still doesn't believe him, and he yells at her that he let her believe that he was Spider-Man for a while. "Because I wanted you to look at me the way you look at him," he shouts at her. But he pushes her away, telling her that he never wants to see that Spider-Man costume again. And as Gabe turns to leave the park, he looks over to see a group of Spiderites protesting Doom. He sighs, hanging his head in disgust. Meanwhile, Tyler has finally arrived at the hotel, and as he walks through the door calling for Dana, he looks up in surprise to see the assailant there, a blaster going off and the round piercing his chest. He falls to the ground, collapsing in a growing pool of his own blood. "Rot in hell, Tyler," Conchetta snaps as she steps over the body, heading for the door. A short time later, Dana manages to free her hands in the darkened bedroom. She pulls off the gag and moves to the door, reminding herself to be careful in case the assailant is still in the house. She slips through the shadows but gasps as she makes her way out, finding Tyler laying on the floor. 6 minutes later, the paramedics pull Tyler out of the house, placing him in the back of an ambulance and flying away. Meanwhile, back over in New York, Spider-Man swings through the city when a flyboy shouts out for him. "Oh, just what I need!" Spider-Man snaps, preparing to fight against the cops as he lands against a wall. "Back off, I'm not in the mood!" He snaps, but the flyboy shakes his head. "Nor are we," the cops tell him, mentioning that he was swinging into their path and they were warning him so that they don't collide. "Be aware, the president has ordered you to be left alone for 72 hours while you consider his offer." Spider-Man cocks his eyebrow beneath his mask. "And after that? Turn it down and find out, Spider-Man," he growls before flying away. Meanwhile, in downtown, two Fenris goons sit around discussing how they should hit Alchemex now that Tyler Stone is out of the way, when the company is at its weakest. "I can lead us against the leaderless core," Bloodmace shouts, raising his weapon high, but his companion points out that no one will follow him since he was defeated at the hands of Spider-Man. Bloodmace begins to get mad, but they're interrupted as a black goo begins to slither up out of the sewers. "Yeah, that's the weirdest sewage backup I've ever seen!" the goon shouts, getting to his feet, but the sludge begins to take form, standing and taking the image of a man. "So, the old Stoneheart went down. Details, morons! I want details!" The monster growls at them, and Bloodmace rushes the monster, preparing to attack, but the goo wraps around him, his skin beginning to sizzle and burn. He screams in pain as he melts before his friend's eyes. The monster releases the bones that remain, looking back at the other Fenris goon. "I hate repeating myself." Meanwhile, Miguel finally arrives at his apartment, greeted by the recently fixed version of Lila. He asks her to patch him through to Xena, who gets to the Hollow while still driving her car back to New York. "Miguel, thank heavens. Where are?" she asks, staring at the Hollow in shock, and Miguel informs her that he's home and everything is under control. "That's debatable," she says, motioning to his body as Miguel looks down at the Hollow of himself in shock, and he sees his head on Lila's body. He hangs up on Xena, stating that he'll call her back before rounding on Lila. "What the shock was that about?" he asks her, and Lila smiles, informing him that while he's been gone, she's been studying humor. The door to his apartment slides open, revealing Doom and his guards, though. "I'm here for my answer, Mr. O'Hara," he says as he walks through the apartment, Doom standing before him, explaining, "I need my answer now. Considering the grave condition of Tyler Stone, the sooner we fill his position, the better." Doom explains, and Miguel looks at him in shock, asking what he means about Tyler, having not known that Tyler was shot in the chest. Meanwhile, Conchetta walks by a metal recycling bin, dropping her blaster pistol in it and continuing her trek back to Gabe's apartment. Gabe heads into Casey's apartment, trying to knock on her door so that they can talk about everything, but the woman is angry, yelling at Gabe through the door about how he should have tried harder to tell her that he wasn't Spider-Man, that he allowed her to believe it for so long. "We're through, O'Hara!" she shouts, sliding down and crying on the floor. Gabe shakes his head, walking away. Meanwhile, over in the hospital, Dana is unaware that the black sludge is beginning to leak out of the sink. The room door slides open, revealing Miguel. He walks into the room, more shocked about the news that Dana and Tyler are together than his boss having been shot. "My world doesn't rise and set on you, Miguel. At least, not anymore," she tells him, but they put aside their differences, with Dana asking Miguel to be with her this time. Well, how about that, as I live and breathe, or whatever it is that I do? Miguel O'Hara and Tyler Stone
I get to kill you at the same time. How considerate!
The monster known as Venom says as it steps into the room, its tongue sliding out, dripping green fluid on the floor, and it attacks quickly, with Miguel ducking under the blow, punching him in the stomach. But the monster doesn't seem to notice as Miguel's hand comes away burning. Venom attacks a second time, with Miguel ducking under the blows, rushing towards the door.
How about that? Not Mr. Brave anymore.
He growls as he turns his gaze back to Dana and Tyler. Dana tries to protect Stone, but Venom backhands her, knocking her away. He stands over the body, his hands morphing into sharp and spiky weapons.
Goodbye, old man!
He growls, but a web shoots out, staying his hand.
I know you.
Venom snarls as he whirls, glaring at Spider-Man, and then he roars, rushing at him.
Back when we were another, the players change, but the game stays the same. And this time, between Spider-Man and Venom, the winner will be Venom!
Venom slams into Spider-Man hard, knocking them both out of the hospital window, sending them plummeting towards the city below. Venom laughs as his long claws grope at Spider-Man, and Miguel can feel his skin beginning to burn beneath his costume. He has no time for strategy, no time for mercy, and he punches Venom hard in the face, kicking off of him and knocking him away, shooting out his webbing, swinging to a nearby wall, and watching as the monster slaps hard onto the ground, becoming a puddle of goo. But Miguel's eyes widen in shock as he continues to watch the goo take form once again. I'm not seeing this, he thinks to himself, and Venom stands up, leaping onto the wall, his claws digging in as he rushes at Spider-Man once again.
That's it. After this time, all this hate, that's the best you could do?
Meanwhile, Xena storms into Miguel's apartment, angry that he never called her back. Hello, Xena. You seem well. My, that's a lovely outfit. Lila greets her with a smile, and Xena demands to know where Miguel is, with Lila informing her that he rushed out when he discovered that Tyler had been shot. Wait, back up! Xena shouts at her, and Lila smiles. Hello, Xena. You seem well. My, that's a lovely outfit, she repeats, but Xena waves her hands and tells Lila to forget it, with the Hollow looking confused. And you are? Xena grows angry and repeats her name. Hello, Xena. You seem well. My, that's a lovely outfit, Lila says with a smile as Xena screams in frustration. Meanwhile, Venom lashes out with a blade, slashing at the wall as Spider-Man leaps away with the help of his web gliders.
That's impressive, that flying thing, but I think I want you to come after me.
Venom snarls as he leaps away, crashing through a window into another part of the hospital. He grabs a hold of a doctor, his black sludge burning the man's skin as Spider-Man leaps into the room, but Venom whirls around, lashing out with his tentacles. Spider-Man manages to leap over the attack, but Venom tangles him in his own web glider. Spider-Man tries to leap over him again, but Venom grabs him by the leg with his tentacle, lifting him into the air. He swings him through the air, slamming him into a wall and then throwing him out the window. As he begins to fall through the air, Miguel realizes that Venom shredded his web glider with his spikes, so he shoots out a web, trying to slow himself down. But the wall that the webbing hit crumbles away and he continues his plummet. At the last second, he shoots out enough webs to cushion himself, slamming into the ground. But Venom has returned to Tyler Stone's room, smashing through the door with his sludge weapons.
Old man, where are you?
He roars, but Dana had them move Tyler, and Venom is greeted by several of Doom's S.H.I.E.L.D. officers.
You'll have to deal with us, and we've got this situation under control.
They shout as they raise their weapons, and Venom narrows his red eyes. Back over in Miguel's apartment, Xena tries to call Conchetta, but she informs Xena that she hasn't seen Miguel and that she's rather busy. Sure, but if you see him, could you tell him that I called? She asks. Conchetta agrees and hangs up, and in the darkness of Gabe's apartment, she returns to her recording. Gabe, I'm recording this to tell you a few things. First, Xena called. Second, this is why I killed myself. Meanwhile, gunfire erupts in the hospital, and the rest of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents rush through the door. They all stop in shock as Venom lifts the body of the former captain.
Don't worry, everything is under control, and as under control as a corpse can make it.
He throws the body at them before raising two of the S.H.I.E.L.D. blasters, opening fire.
Good thing you're in a hospital, huh?
He calls out. Meanwhile, on the street, people are gathering around Spider-Man, wondering if they should help. Someone reaches out to him, offering to remove the mask and learn who he is, but Spidey's hand shoots up, grabbing him, pushing him away, and leaping into the air. The mask stays on, but the kid gloves come off. He growls as he shoots out a webbing, swinging back to the hospital. By the time he gets there, he only finds a destroyed room and the dead cops. Spider-Man stops and pauses, realizing that the monster had recognized him as Miguel, and there was something vaguely familiar about his voice. So a short time later, Miguel heads to his new office in Alchemex, calling Xena to let her know that he is okay. But she's shocked when she discovers where he is. "Are you nuts?" she asks, but she turns and heading for the door. "Don't answer that, I'm on my way." Back at the office, Miguel sighs as he hangs up, and Winston walks in informing him that Tyler Stone has been moved to a secure location. He thanks his new assistant, reminding him that this is merely a temporary situation. This place would turn into a shark pool without one person in charge, and plenty of innocent people would get chewed up. He tells Winston, leaning against the desk, asking Winston to bring him everything that they have on someone called Venom. "Oh, and tell the S.H.I.E.L.D. reps that Spider-Man is off limits. I like the guy's style," he says, and Winston nods, heading out of the office with Miguel smiling. "I could get used to this, but I wonder what Ma's going to say," he whispers to himself. Meanwhile, at Gabe's apartment, Conchetta pulls out a new blaster from her purse, putting it against her head. The sound of the blaster fire echoes throughout the apartment. A short time later, Winston is sitting at his desk, listening to Miguel argue with Xena about him taking over Alchemex and what good he can do for the company. A voice calls out to Winston, and he turns around, his eyes widening in shock as the bladed black tendril rips through his chest. Meanwhile, Miguel finally turns back to his computer as the Venom files are coming through. Xena demands to know what he's doing, that he's not listening to her, and Miguel explains that this information is very important. She turns away in disgust, storming out of the room, and she stops short as she enters Miguel's waiting room, staring directly at Dana. In downtown, Casey walks the streets, but she looks up as a strange voice calls out to her.
Well, hello. I'm looking for the S-Man, and my understanding is that you can get him. I suggest you cooperate, or this could go very badly.
The strange goblin-like figure calls out to her as she looks at him in shock. Dana and Xena both turn to Winston's desk, shocked to find the cyborg dead in his chair. And they both let out a scream, bringing Miguel rushing out of his office. He stops short, looking in shock and fear, as Venom is now holding both of the girls, wrapped up in his tendrils.
Miggy, it's great seeing you again. This is going to be fun. One of them gets to live on your say-so while the other dies. You've got 5 minutes to decide, or I'll just kill them both.
And there you have it, the introduction of Venom 2099. Now, the weird part about this is you can't find these issues or any of the other issues ending the series in a collected format. We had to go deep diving to find issues 34 to 46, but you're going to get them all right here at Comicstorian every Wednesday, as long as we can keep finding them. So make sure you subscribe, and next week we're going to find out who dies.